if you win real big, they might even try to give you a hotel night stay. And the reason they do that is because they know that you are going to try to repeat that.
Right.
Hey, I'm Chris Lamm. This is the Money Hole Podcast. Don't forget to like, subscribe, download, and leave us a comment. Today, I'm actually being interviewed myself from my friend Fab here. Thanks for doing this, Fab.
Dude, it's exciting. I think I get the honor of hosting you to find out who you are to your beautiful audience. So we get to jump in and talk about, your life.
Yep.
Who is Chris Lamm? So, Chris, I think what it's really important to know is that, your audience need to know this, that who you actually are. Because, what we see is who you are on social media, and a lot of your friends intimately know how successful you've been, but I don't think they know that how you started out. And I think that's super important, because a lot of the time when we see somebody very successful like you, charismatic like you, we automatically think that they were born with money, like a silver spoon in their mouth. But that wasn't the case with you at all, was it? Will you just tell us a little bit about your background, how you grew up, what your childhood was like?
Yeah. So, I grew up lower middle class. My mom and my dad got divorced at a young age. We moved out here to California. We lived in Lakehead, and Lakehead's a small town just south of Shasta Lake is right there by Shasta Lake, north of it. And we lived in a 1-bedroom log cabin, my brothers and I. It was probably 800 square feet because we just didn't have a lot of money. My mom was a very hard worker, and we ended up, she took great care of us, but in the beginning it was rough. Now, when I say that, I will say that I didn't realize that back then, because we had a home and my mom did a great job. But there was a Christmas one year where we couldn't even afford a Christmas tree. And so some people had found out and brought a Christmas tree to our home. And then some family members brought a bucket with some rocks and put it in. And then my mom, she painted Christmas ornaments that she bought, and they were nice. They're super beautiful. She was very good at it. And she would sell them at her work to get money to buy us presents. Well, that year, some people had said that there's a family here in Lakehead that the kids aren't really getting a whole lot of presents this year, which we didn't care. We were happy. But we ended up one day having someone show up at our house, and Merle Haggard bought my brother and I a ton of presents for Christmas.
Merle Haggard,
yeah,
the country singer?
He did. How
did that happen?
Well, there was a lady in Lakehead who was really good friends with him, and she was good friends with my mom, and he was a major bass fisherman on Shasta Lake. And so, just shout out to Merle all these years later. I haven't forgotten that. And, that's something that really inspired me at a young age, that, if you have something and you can do something for someone else, you should. So anyways, skip forward a few years, went to high school in Cottonwood, California. My mom worked her way up in an insurance job, and my brothers and I, we got into a lot of trouble, and we made a lot of pretty bad decisions, and I won't get into all of it, but let's just say that I got sober by the age of 19 because of some of those decisions. I, had a pretty crazy life, partying, and, I was a DJ for a long time, traveling when I was in high school, and I ended up getting into the mortgage business in 2001 because I really didn't love going to school. I don't know if I had ADHD or what, but it just, the way that you would sit there for hours and people just drill information, drove me nuts.
Right.
And so there was a time that someone had told me, hey, you can go to work 12 to 5 and skip school and get credits and make money. And I was just like, well, why isn't everyone doing that? And so a friend of mine, he had said, hey, you should go talk to my family. They own a mortgage company in town. And that was kind of my introduction into the mortgage industry. And so got in the mortgage industry, started processing back then. Of course, back then it was a totally different world. This is when some of the bad loans were being made that ultimately led to the 2008 financial crisis. And I saw all of that firsthand. And I saw a lot of people making very bad decisions, both people that were giving the loans, the government, the lending companies, and the consumers and the people that were borrowing, taking out 100% equity with adjustable rate mortgages, stating income that they didn't have to buy boats and things they didn't need.
Right.
And I feel like that was such a gift for me, because when it all came down and everyone started losing everything, I was young and it left an impression to me. It was shortly after that I had gotten sober and started going on missions trips and getting, connected with men that had what I wanted in life, who were married a long time, who were honest and hardworking and had the same values I had, that I was introduced to a gentleman that I ended up working for. And he was the opposite of some of the first guys I had worked for. This was a guy who he had a mortgage company. He had all kinds of other businesses, and I helped him process some loans, but I also helped him with kind of managing some of his books. And he was super frugal, multimillionaire before he was 30. You would have never known it if you met him. He always bought used cars. He would go straight to the, to the for sale or clearance aisle when he bought clothes.
Wow.
And he was buying manufactured homes, having them shipped here and put on little lots and selling them. And he was doing some incredible things. And he also worked incredibly hard. I mean, this guy, he had more energy than anyone I ever met. He was super driven and always positive, and he just had a lot of resilience. It was like a problem that would, put anyone in a place where they'd be spun out. He would just rise above it, figure out how to fix it, and just keep moving forward. And so he was a mentor of mine. And, that guy ended up going on to start an international company.
Wow.
And I've had a lot of mentors along the way, growing up with no dad in the house. I realized the value, and I didn't even know it until later in my life, but I just realized that I had learned that if you see someone who has what you want in life, you should spend time with them, and you should get to know what they did, how they got there, hear their story, ask them for help if they're willing to give it, which a lot of people are.
Yeah. So like you at 21, so you start this new job as a mortgage advisor. How did that translate to you becoming so fiscally savvy? Like you mentioned mentors, but like how long was it into your journey that you realized that this obviously is going to be the career for you, very successful as you are? Like what were the steps up to that point? When did you realize you needed a mentor to teach you?
A lot of people that are in real estate and mortgage lending, they have helped dozens, if not hundreds or thousands in my case, of clients accumulate wealth and build positive cash flow or passive income. And yet they've never done it themselves.
Right.
And so there was this time where I realized these guys aren't brain surgeons like that are doing this. Like I can do this too. But even though I saw every step of what they did, there was still this internal voice that said, that is risky. That is scary. You can't do that. You don't have what it takes to do that. And so I started finding people that had done it and running my ideas by them. And they either said, that's a great idea. That's how I did it. Maybe you should think about doing it this way. Or they said, that's not a good idea. You shouldn't do that. Here's why. And when you do that long enough, really what I'm trying to say is I asked a lot of questions. When you do that long enough, you start realizing that you do have what it takes because you've pretty much asked all the questions. You've looked at everything there is to look, and it reduces the risk of those decisions, right?
Right.
And then so you make that decision to whatever it is, whether it's buy a rental property, start investing into your first money market, and then a 401k. And, the truth is, it wasn't that I was always that way. It's been a process for me. And I think that's important that people know that, because I ended up getting into a coaching group that I'm still part of today. I'm actually a coach for them today, about 13 years ago. And they coach business people that do what I do in real estate and a few other things. But what they do is their tagline is creating millionaires since 2001. And they do it three different ways. They do it by helping you give a great experience to your client, but they also help you with your P&L and your personal family budget. And at the time, there was a lot of business coaches that I was looking at because I knew I needed to find someone to help me because no one really tells you how to run a business.
Right.
Even if you go to college, like when it comes to a lot of the day in and day out details of leadership or employees or, HR issues in a state like California, like there's not a lot of people that know how to do those things.
Mm-hmm.
But the one thing that these guys did that I didn't see anyone else do is they actually held you accountable to how you spent your money.
Mm.
And I had some really bad money habits in my life. I spent money like it was going out of style. I wanted to impress people with having nice looking things.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew from what I had done up to that point that this isn't going to get me to the place where I really want to be, but I don't know how to change this.
Mm-hmm.
And so this group, they make you do a personal family budget every month and send it in, and they review every line of every dollar you spent that month.
And what's that like? Because I mean, it's kind of exposing,
It's
right?
very exposing.
Because you start making your first paycheck, you start holes in your pocket, you're buying things. How does that make you feel when you start to realize you've made a few financial mistakes? You find a mentor, you get in this coaching group. Now you're asked to do things that are probably very challenging to you personally, right? What made that shift in you?
You have to be sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Mm.
You have to be willing and realize that I don't want to live like this anymore. I think it also helps that you're around other people who are very honest and they tell you, listen, I did not end up here because I was a good person. Like I made horrible decisions. In fact, mine were worse than yours.
Wow.
Let me tell you about them. And then you become inspired and you realize if they can do it, I can do it too. And I'm not alone.
Right.
And I think it's really important. And it's one of the biggest challenges with money as a topic is that people just don't talk about it. And I think that's one of the problems is that there's shame around money. People are ashamed in how they spend it or how, or their lack of knowledge. And if they just realize that we're all in the same boat, we may be further along on the journey, but we all had to get to that place where we did not want to live like this anymore. And we have to become willing to do something about it.
So you talk about budget. And a lot of people are kind of fearful about budget because they feel it's restrictive. They feel like, they can't spend what they want to spend their money on. So what did a budget do for you?
Well, a budget leads to freedom is first and foremost what people need to know. And it isn't about restricting you. It's about giving you liberation. And when I started doing my budget, I learned what I needed to know right away. The truth will set you free, right? So a lot of people don't even realize how much it takes to keep the lights on.
Right.
We call this the survival number. How much does it cost to pay your housing expense, your gas, your food, your insurance, your cell phone bills? I mean, just the basics of life, no extra. How much is that every month? And how much do you actually bring home after taxes every month? Well, then you at least know where you're at. And then you can start figuring out like, where's the rest of it going? If people just did that without committing to getting out of debt, saving a nickel, but they just did that every month for 5 years, that would change their life because they know what's really going on. They're facing the truth every single month. That will change you because you will see it. It's no different than someone stepping on the scale every day.
Right.
You're not going to, it's going to change you one way or the other. You're either going to stop stepping on the scale and avoid the mirror, or you're going to figure out how to get a trainer and go on a diet. Right.
Right.
So the information is important first and foremost. Well, then from then you set some goals. And the goal that we use that we try to help people with is, 30, 30, 10, 20, and this isn't perfect, but hear me out. 10% you give away, 30% you live on, 30% of the IRS, and you invest 20% a month. And so if that's the goal, and I can't do that right now because I don't have enough income, or I have too much debt, or a combination of both, then what is it going to take to get me there? Do I need to get more income? Do I need to reduce debt? It's usually both. And I start the journey towards doing that because I know from experience and from being around people that if I can do that, my life will be better. My marriage will be better.
Right.
My kids will have a better life. I will have less stress, which means I will be a better parent, a better friend, a better employee, a better coworker. I'll sleep better at night. It will improve the quality of my life if I learn to do those things. It wasn't ever about getting rich. It was about learning to have a balanced life and money is a part of that. And so I think for people with a budget, they have to realize that what they think a budget is, it's probably not that at all.
Right.
It's probably the opposite of what they think it is.
Yeah.
It leads to freedom and it leads to the truth.
And as well, like, you mentioned you became a believer. It's a stewardship model, right? Because I think, we talk about people with money. I think one of the core values, whether they're a person of faith or not, generosity is something that if you have a budget, it enables you to look at areas where you'd like to give and bless people. Because I think if you've been given money, the idea is you just don't accumulate it for yourself. You've been given it to bless others with, right?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, you see a lot of people who really make a mess out of their lives because they don't have a purpose when they get money.
Right.
We see it all the time, and then if you're lucky, you'll start seeing some people who have money and they change the world. And it's super inspiring.
Right.
Because they're really fun people to be around. They're doing some great things. They're having fun. They're not stressed. They're playful. They seem like they have it all. And they're not owned by their money.
Right.
They're not owned by their toys. It doesn't mean that having nice things, there's anything wrong with that. Those people probably have some nice things, but they're not owned by them.
Right.
And that is really the goal of financial freedom. It's seriously to be able to enjoy the life that you've been given in a way that most people never get to enjoy it because they've never known another way. For example, when I got out of debt, I felt a feeling I'd never felt before. And I talked to one of my mentors and he said, most people don't know the stress and anxiety they carry from being in debt.
Yeah.
Because they've never, ever had it any other way.
Right.
Even when they were kids in their own household, they saw the stress on their parents because they were always having money problems. They felt the insecurity of going to school, wearing the knockoff shoes, seeing all these other kids with the nice things that seemingly had the better life,
right?
Which we all know now that's not always the case, right? But back then that's very real for kids. And so even before they had money, they felt the effects of it based on how their parents lived and the belief systems their parents were instilling to them. And so most people don't ever get out of that.
You get into budgeting. You start to understand where your money's going, how to use money. When was the first time you had enough to kind of start to invest? How long into this process?
Yeah. So I bought my first house to live in right around the time the housing crash was starting.
Wow, 2008?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I still own that house today. I bought it for $190. It dropped a lot, but it always rented and I still own it today. It's worth double what I paid for it. So, but I bought that house and then from there, I started building up reserves in a money market account just so that I, had the emergency fund. From there, I started doing a 401k, because the path that we follow, it's very simple. And I have always found that simple is usually one of the better ways to do things. And so, we believe that getting out of debt, building up 3 to 6 months of reserves, and then starting to look at your pre-tax employer-based investments where you can bring your taxable income down and just have it taken out of your check every month. And once you start maxing those things out, your income grows. And it's funny how when people start following the process, I haven't seen many people where they didn't come to me and say, it happens almost every week. Hey, I'm maxing out my 401k. I've bought in rentals. I'm making this much more money a month. What do I do with it now? It's pretty amazing to see people encounter a cash flow problem,
right? Where
they have more cash than they know what to do with.
Wow.
From there, you can go into investment real estate, which I believe in, and I know you do too. You can definitely get into the stock market. A lot of people are scared of the stock market, but listen, the stock market is not the roulette table. It's a long-term play, just like real estate is. And so if people dollar cost average and follow, buying boring stocks that pay dividends, that are blue chip companies that are necessary like Walmart, Costco, Ford, and you do it over time, you're going to do well.
Right.
But the thing about investing is it's a long-term game. And I think that a lot of people, they go into it with a very short-term mentality, and that's what bites them, because they buy when everyone else is buying. And then things get scary and they sell, and then they say it didn't work.
Right.
Well, no, it did work. You just didn't follow the strategy.
Right. So for you, being fiscally prudent before you even invested, did you build up that reserve fund of 3 to 6 months first?
I did.
Or so you did that first just to basically secure yourself. And then with that, you would invest in stocks, you diversify.
Then I started maxing out my 401k every year. I still do. And then I started buying residential real estate. I own farmland, commercial buildings, single family homes, multifamily homes. Anywhere where I felt like it was good cash flow in a good area, I bought it. I bought some things I probably shouldn't have, but I shouldn't have ever sold anything because I've always done well over time. And, now investing is a big part of my life, because once you start accumulating wealth, you have to learn how to protect it. And you got to start thinking about taxation and estate planning. And that has been, honestly, in my business, that has been one of the differentiating factors between someone working with me and somebody else is because of my experience. Most people that are coming to me, they're not coming to me to buy a house.
Right.
They're coming to me to create wealth and passive income. They don't even know that sometimes until I start asking them questions. And so, those are the things that I focus on now. That's kind of how it started. I'm still in that game today. And it's less emotional than it used to be. It was scary in the beginning.
Right.
There was something about taking my money out of my bank account and putting it into this investment that seemed really, really risky.
Right.
And now I realize that keeping cash in the bank is also a risk.
Right.
And so everything has risk. And
so your risk profile then, you say it's for the long term.
Yeah.
Right. Some people want to get rich quick. For people, I mean, this is one of the reasons why you create Money Hall podcast, right? It's, good people, good money. Wealthy isn't just about having a ton of money.
Right.
It's your portfolio lifestyle, right? I have a healthy family. I have healthy kids. I have a healthy relationship with the Lord. I have healthy finances. For you, when did you start to realize, let me ask you this, what does risk look like for you? And how do you approach risk when it comes to investing?
Risk for me, risk looks like trying to shortcut the system, outthink it, or do something faster than what most people do. There's a guy that I know that bought into Tesla when it was really low. And we were on a call, one of our coaching calls, and he had made $7 million on one trade. And
oh my gosh,
he was bragging about it. And our coach, who has $100 million, said to him, I won't say his name, but he just said, "Hey, I want you to know something. That trade ruined you." And he said, "Why do you guys think that trade ruined him?" And that may not be the truth, but he wanted to make a point. And we all said, well, because he's going to now try to repeat that.
Right.
It's no difference in going in and playing blackjack and hitting a winning hand on the first hand. They're going to, the people that work there, I think they call them the pit bosses. They're going to come up and congratulate you, try to offer you a drink. If you win real big, they might even try to give you a hotel night stay. And the reason they do that is because they know that you are going to try to repeat that.
Right.
And so for me, risk has to do with a lot of it is me trying to be smarter than some of the old gray haired guys I know that do things that seem very boring to me, that I've come to learn. That's probably the way I should be doing it.
Right. And the reason for the podcast, and we've talked about it, is so you can share your experiences with people. You bring your friends on, you bring successful people on to talk about, in effect, creating some kind of life hack in some ways, not just hacks, but like wisdom into getting into real estate. Talk to them about, fear, false evidence appearing real, right?
Yep.
It doesn't have to be that fearful. So talk to me a little bit about your heart for the podcast and what you want to see happen through this.
It all started for me when me and our friends were hanging out up in Wyoming.
Right.
And, for people that are watching, I mean, these are all leaders, pastors, businessmen who are, godly men with great marriages, great lives. And we were just being big kids and we were having a blast and we were smoking cigars and teasing each other. It was like going back to the 8th grade.
It was.
And I had this moment where I thought to myself, this is not the picture that a lot of people in the world have when they think of Christian men. And I mean that in a very positive way, that these guys are not only living great lives and changing the world. And I mean that about you, Fab.
Thank you.
When I met you, you were creating one of the most important movies that I've ever seen that still people talk about to this day. And I know you could have done a lot of other things in your life. But they're also having a lot of fun, like a ton of fun. And I was like, and people need to hear these conversations.
Right.
You know, they need to hear the struggle because it's real and they're not alone. And they need to hear the tactics on how they can make change in their life, whether it's parenting, their marriage, their money, their friendships. You know, there's a lot of people that don't even have friends. I talk to people every day. They don't even know what a real friend is, right? And so when I think of this holistic approach to life, is we see people every day who have a $100 million body, and they have a late payment on their expensive car out the door, or they have all the money in the world, but they're divorced for the third time, and their kids don't know them. And so I never wanted that. I always realized, man, I want it all in life. I want to have a great marriage. I want to have kids that love me and that I'm doing my best to raise. I want to have great friendships. And money is certainly a part of wholeness. And when I grew up in the church, there was a belief system for a time that money was bad. And I had to get rid of that belief system and start really understanding the power in currency and how it can not only improve my life, but improve the people's around me. So that was kind of the heart behind it, is to just have some fun conversations with people that I care about, and to help people understand, you know, what having it all really means and what it doesn't mean, and that there's a path to getting there, and oftentimes a lot of failure, and that's okay. And like I said early on, I don't think there's enough people talking about money, especially in the church.
Yeah. What is it about the church? And maybe it's not just in the four walls of the church. Maybe it's generally people have a bad relationship with money. Why is that?
I think it's general. You see it in the church too. And I think in the church is a place where you would maybe expect something different, because people are there to get free. And this is certainly a place of bondage for most people, whether they're poverty mindset or they have a lot of money and it's owning them. You know, being in recovery for 19 years, AA meetings and Christian men's recovery groups, I've learned the power of vulnerability and transparency on a level, you know, and when people start talking about the real stuff in their life, that's when they get the breakthrough. That's also when they help other people to talk about it. And so the unique thing about that coaching group that I'm a part of, the core, is we're a very transparent community. Whether you have $100 million, $5 million, you're just getting started, people there do not see themselves as any better than you. They just have been following the process longer.
Yeah.
And I've been doing it long enough now where I've seen so many people that come in and follow the process, don't think about it. You know, when you work hard, you take good care of people, you're generous. Like, there's certain things that are going to happen. It's just the way the world works.
Right.
And I think that a lot of people have so much emotion around money, whether it's shame, pride, guilt, whatever those emotions are, they blind them to seeing the value in asking for help, asking for advice, or sharing their advice with someone else. Because when a lot of people who have money, they're afraid that if they talk about it with their friends will treat them different. Right. And in many cases, that can be the truth. And so I think it's emotion, man. I think people just have all kinds of twisted up ideas about what it means if someone has it or doesn't have it, or if they only knew what I had, they would think different of me. And I think when people can get free of that mindset and become, you know, really know who they are as a human being, their identity, then it doesn't matter. And in that space, you can start having some real conversations that really help.
Yeah. I love you, Chris. I think this is going to be so exciting for your audience, because I think they get to see somebody who, you know, brought up without any money, went through cancer, adopted 3 kids, has become very successful, not just in your community, but in a greater scale. And I think what I love about you is how you're a very hard worker, but you're so giving, you're so generous. I don't even know people know half of who you are just by doing this and on social media, but you give to so many worthwhile courses that change so many people's lives. And I think, the more and more episodes we do and people get to see who you truly are, I think that's the gold in this, because you are living the holistic lifestyle of what you preach. You know what I mean? You're not somebody that just is doing a podcast for influence. You do the thing that you do is because you believe in investing in people.
Thank you.
And it's because you want to see people grow. You want to impart what you went through. Mm-hmm. As hard as it was to see people actually encounter this freedom. And it's not just in money, it's in their relationship with the Lord. It's people being free of addiction. And I think the reason why it's so important that people hear this is because it can be done. Like, as you said, if you follow the process, if you follow the laws that the Lord has put in place through generosity, through saving, through investing, I think that makes for a wealthy life.
Yes.
So listen,
appreciate it.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave Chris a 5-star comment, because this podcast will change your life.